The year is 1206, near the banks of the Onon River. A man named Temujin gathered all the tribes loyal to him and called a great Kurultai. For nearly a century, the Mongolian steppes had been plagued by political fragmentation and the absence of central authority. Temujin filled that vacuum. At this assembly, he was granted a new title, a title that would echo through history. From that moment on, he would be known as Genghis Khan, one of the greatest rulers the world has ever seen. When Genghis Khan died in 1227, just 21 years after becoming the Khan of the Mongol Confederation, his empire stretched from Beijing in the east to the Caspian Sea in the west. He had conquered much of northern China. He had crushed the Khwarezmian Empire, one of the most powerful states of the era, and he had seized vast portions of their lands. At the time of his death, the territory under his control was twice the size of the Roman Empire and 4 times larger than the empire of Alexander the Great. Unlike Alexander, his empire would not collapse upon his death. His sons and grandsons would continue conquering new lands, spreading fear among their enemies, and expanding his legacy. Together, they would create the largest contiguous land empire in human history. The Roman Empire took centuries to reach its greatest extent. Alexander inherited a fully formed state and a professional army ready for conquest. Genghis Khan inherited nothing. He did not receive a kingdom from his father. He did not take command of an established state. He built everything from nothing. He designed the state structure himself, and his story begins in tragedy. Around the year 1162, near the Onon River, a child was born. He was the son of Yesugei, a Mongol tribal leader. When shamans examined the newborn, they noticed something unusual. In his right palm was a blood clot shaped like a knucklebone. They interpreted this as an omen, a sign that this child would spill much blood in the future. Returning from a campaign against the Tatars, Yesugei learned of his son's birth. During that campaign, he had captured an enemy chieftain named Temujin. He named his son after this captive, a name meaning hard, strong, iron-like, Temujin. Temujin spent his early childhood racing horses and hunting with his brothers. But tension brewed within the family. His half-brother Börte, born from one of Yesugei's other wives, considered himself the rightful heir. The conflict between them grew steadily more severe. When Temujin was 9 years old, his father took him to his mother's tribe to find him a future wife. Yesugei selected a girl named Börte. According to Mongol custom, Temujin was required to stay with her family and serve them until he was old enough to marry. Yesugei left his son behind and began the journey home. On the way, he encountered a group of Tatars. They poisoned him. Barely conscious, Yesugei managed to return to his people. Before dying, he asked to see his son. Temujin never arrived in time. After Yesugei's death, Temujin and his family sought refuge among the Taichiud, a related tribe. They were rejected. His uncles offered no help either. Soon after, even members of his own tribe refused to remain under the authority of his mother, Holun. One by one, they abandoned her. For Temujin and his family, the hardest years had begun. They had no claim to the tribe's herds. To survive, Temujin led his family to the forested slopes of Mount Burkan Khaldun. There, they lived by fishing and gathering wild plants. Hunger was constant. During this time, Börte refused to share the fish he caught with the rest of the family. Enraged, Temujin killed him. He was only 13 years old. This act ended their rivalry, but it marked something far more important. From that moment on, Temujin learned a brutal lesson. Anyone who challenged his authority, even his own brother, could be eliminated. He believed mercy had no place on the road to power, yet his choices would drag him into even harsher trials. His mother, furious that he had killed his brother at such a critical moment, expelled him. Temujin lived alone in the forest for a time. Secretly, he hunted and hid food where his family could find it. When his mother realized this, she forgave him. As the family survived by stolen and purchased sheep, Temujin formed a close friendship with a boy his own age named Jamukha from the Jadaran clan. Their bond deepened. They became blood brothers. One day, this friendship would change the fate of the Mongol world. For a long time, Temujin and his family lived hidden from the world. Many believed they had died. But word eventually spread that Temujin was still alive. His former enemies feared what he might become. They decided he had to be eliminated. A raid was organized. Temujin was captured. A wooden collar was locked around his neck, and he was paraded before the tribe to humiliate him. He lived as a prisoner, until one night. During a local celebration, Temujin seized his moment. He yanked the wooden collar from the hands of a weak guard, knocked him to the ground, and beat him to death. But escape was not enough. He had to disappear. He fled to the Onon River and submerged himself in its waters. The wooden collar, once a symbol of shame, kept his head above water. Fate intervened again. A man recognized him. It was Sorkhan Shira, one of Yesugei's former soldiers. Seeing search parties approaching, Sorkhan Shira misled them, saving Temujin's life. Despite the risk, Sorkhan Shira hid him, dried his clothes, fed him, and gave him a horse so he could find his family. Temujin would never forget this kindness. When he became Khan, he would reward Sorkhan Shira and his sons. One of them would even be made a general. Years passed. Temujin grew into adulthood. He gathered a small following, raided the Tatars, and began to build a reputation. Now, he needed a wife. He returned to Börte's tribe, and he married her. But the past had not been forgotten. Temujin's mother, Holun, had once been abducted by Yesugei from the Merkit tribe. The Merkit remembered. They waited. Soon after Temujin's marriage, they struck. Temujin escaped. Börte did not. She was taken captive. Enraged, Temujin turned to his father's old ally, Togrul, leader of the Keraite. Togrul remembered Yesugei's help and agreed to assist. He also advised Temujin to seek support from Jamukha. Together they formed a coalition. The Merkits were defeated, and Börte was rescued. But another problem emerged. Shortly after her return, Börte gave birth to a son. His paternity was uncertain. Temujin named him Joshi, meaning guest. He accepted the child as his own. Later, Börte would bear him 3 more sons, Chagatai, Ogadei, and Tolui. In 1189, Temujin was granted the title of Khan at a Kurultai. At the same time, the Tatars were raiding the Jin dynasty in northern China. The Jin rulers sought help from Togrul and Temujin. Temujin agreed. Together, they attacked the Tatars. Their chieftains were killed. Their lands were plundered. But when the campaign ended, the Jin emperor credited all success to Togrul. He awarded him the title Wang, meaning king. Temujin's power was growing, and so was envy, especially from Jamukha. Temujin's victories against the Tatars made him stronger, too strong. Among the Mongol tribes, jealousy began to spread. At the center of that resentment stood one man, Jamukha, Temujin's blood brother. Jamukha believed leadership belonged to the aristocracy, to noble lineages. Temujin believed power should belong to those with ability and loyalty. This difference would tear the Mongol world apart. Jamukha formed a massive alliance against him. Tatars, Merkits, Naimans, Oirats, Taichiuds. With their support, Jamukha took the title Gur Khan, meaning universal leader. In his eyes, Temujin was a usurper. Tensions exploded when Jamukha's brother attempted to steal Temujin's herds. Temujin's son, Jochi, killed him. Jamukha used this incident as justification for war. He launched a campaign against Temujin. Using superior tactics, Jamukha pushed Temujin into open terrain and trapped him under a barrage of arrows. A poisoned arrow struck Temujin's horse. As he changed mounts, another poisoned arrow hit his neck. He was close to death. His loyal companion Gelmay acted without hesitation. He sucked the poison from Temujin's wound, saving his life. That night, Gelmay infiltrated the enemy camp alone and stole fermented mare's milk, kumis, to nourish his wounded leader. Gelmay and his brother Subutai were sons of a blacksmith. Their father, believed to belong to the Turkic Uriankai tribe, had once served Yasuge. Recognizing their talent early, Temujin would later raise both brothers to the rank of commanders. Subutai, in particular, would become one of the greatest generals in military history. The battle ended in disaster for Temujin. 70 of his soldiers, including his brother Hasar, were captured by Jamukha. Jamukha ordered 70 prisoners to be thrown alive into boiling cauldrons. Hasar was beheaded. His head was tied to a horse's tail and dragged across the steppe. When Temujin learned of his brother's death, he showed no reaction. By this point, death had become routine, but revenge was inevitable. Temujin began dismantling Jamukha's coalition piece by piece. In 1202, he launched an attack on Jamukha's allies, the Tatars. He defeated them completely. Instead of exterminating them, he dispersed the Tatars among different tribes. By turning them into scattered minorities, he eliminated the possibility of rebellion. The following year, Temujin allied once more with Togrul and marched against the Naimans, believed to be of Turkic origin. In the campaign, the Naiman ruler Boyruk Khan was killed and his lands were seized. During the battle, Togrul's son Sengum narrowly avoided capture. Temujin's soldiers saved him. As a result, Togrul placed his son under Temujin's protection. Temujin attempted to strengthen the alliance further. He proposed marriage ties between their families. Sengum rejected the offer. He saw Temujin as inferior. Temujin did not forget the insult. Sengum began persuading his aging father to eliminate Temujin. A new alliance formed between Togrul and Jamukha. Because of his age, Togrul handed command of the army to Jamukha. In the spring of 1203, Jamukha led the combined forces against Temujin. But Temujin was prepared. Through spies, he had learned of their plans in advance. Near the Altai Mountains, the armies clashed. Temujin emerged victorious. Togrul fled the battlefield, but fate showed no mercy. Mistaken for a common traveler, he was killed by a border patrol that did not recognize him as the Kurultai Khan. Sengum survived for a time. A groom betrayed him, hoping for a reward, and revealed his location to Temujin. Instead of rewarding the traitor, Temujin ordered his execution. In Temujin's world, betrayal was punished with death, always. Jamukha's end soon followed. Abandoned by his allies, he was captured and brought before Temujin. His followers expected rewards. They were wrong. Temujin ordered all of them, along with their women and children, to be executed. There was no forgiveness for treachery. Jamukha was treated differently. Temujin offered reconciliation. He asked his former blood brother to stand by his side once again. Jamukha refused. He knew the past could never be undone. Defeated and betrayed, he requested a noble death, without bloodshed. Temujin granted his wish. Jamukha was executed by having his neck bones broken. No blood was spilled. After everything was over, one question still haunted Temujin. Who had fired the arrow that nearly killed him? He ordered an investigation. Eventually, a young man named Jirgo came forward. He admitted that he had fired the arrow. Temujin could have executed him. Instead, Jirgo spoke boldly. "If you kill me, I die. But if you spare me, I will cross mountains and oceans for you." Temujin was impressed. He spared him and gave him a new name, Jebe, meaning arrow. Jebe would become one of his most loyal generals. Temujin understood something crucial. Enemies could be turned into allies if they possessed ability and loyalty. In his army, rank was not determined by noble birth. It was earned through merit. This principle became one of the foundations of his success. With Jamukha gone, there was no rival left who could challenge Temujin. One by one, the tribes of the Mongolian steppe fell under his control. Some submitted willingly, others were crushed. But Temujin did not rule through chaos. He ruled through structure. Unlike the old tribal aristocracy, Temujin reorganized society from the ground up. Traditional clan loyalties were broken. Families from different tribes were deliberately mixed together. This prevented old rivalries from resurfacing. Loyalty was no longer to bloodlines. It was to Temujin alone. His army was reorganized using a strict decimal system. Groups of 10, then hundreds, then thousands, then 10,000s. Each unit was commanded not by noble birth, but by merit. If a man proved himself brave, disciplined, and intelligent, he was promoted. If he failed, he was removed. Rank had to be earned. Temujin rewarded loyalty generously. His commanders received land, wealth, and authority. Men like Subutai, Jebe, and Jelme rose from obscurity to power. They were not nobles, they were chosen, and because of that, they were fiercely loyal. But Temujin was equally ruthless toward betrayal. There were no second chances. Anyone who betrayed him, or their own lord, was executed, even if that betrayal benefited him. In Temujin's world, loyalty was sacred. Without it, there was no order. By now, nearly all Turkic and Mongol tribes of the steppe were united under his banner. The Tatars were broken and dispersed, the Merkits destroyed, the Naimans defeated, the Karaits eliminated. For the first time in generations, the Mongolian plateau had a single ruler. In 1206, Temujin called a great Kurultai. Representatives from all tribes gathered. The steppes were silent. Everyone knew what was coming. At this assembly, Temujin was formally proclaimed the supreme ruler of all Mongols, and he received a new title, a title that would echo through history, Genghis Khan, meaning universal ruler. With this title, Temujin ceased to exist. There was only Genghis Khan, not merely a tribal leader, but the founder of a new world order. Genghis Khan now ruled a unified Mongol nation. He introduced new laws known as the Yasa. These laws governed everything: military discipline, loyalty, theft, punishment, and social order. Under the Yasa, all were equal before the law. Noble or commoner, it made no difference. Only obedience mattered. He also ensured religious tolerance. Shamans, Buddhists, Muslims, Christians, all were allowed to worship freely, as long as they obeyed Mongol law. Faith was not an obstacle. Disloyalty was. By 1206, Genghis Khan was ready. The steppe was united. The army was disciplined. The command structure was in place. Now the world beyond the horizon awaited. China, Central Asia, Persia. Empires that believed the Mongols were nothing more than barbarians. They were wrong. This marks the end of Genghis Khan's rise, but not the end of his story, because what followed would reshape the entire world. We will continue the saga of Genghis Khan and his conquests in future episodes. To ensure you don't miss that chapter, and to explore more legendary stories from history, make sure you're subscribed and notifications are turned on, because the rise is complete. But the legend has just begun.